Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of We Can Fight Like Cats If We Have to. Today, you have the fun and the exciting Natasha,
So
and you
excited.
have the cozy and well bundled up me, Sally. So, for those tuning into our podcast for the first time, we are a hypercritical panel of individuals who are of color and who have experienced racialized experiences in New Brunswick. Most of us, all of us, still reside within New Brunswick. Some of our guests in the past have come and left, but we still reside in New Brunswick, and this is still part of our day-to-day life and our day-to-day glory and battle.
Experience.
Huh?
Mhm.
Our day-to-day what?
Experience, but battle is a better
Experience. Yeah,
word.
battle,
Yeah.
I think, is a little bit more accurate.
Yeah.
So a lot going on in the world of hatred in the East Coast these past few weeks. It is election time, and election time seems to get some pretty ugly reactions out of people. And the most recent one being Prabhjot Singh. Now, if I mispronounced his name, I'm so sorry. But Prabhjot Singh is an international student who was living and studying in Truro, Nova Scotia. And he was also a cab driver to make supplemental income, because I'm not sure if you're aware, international students pay 2 to 3 times more than Canadian students do for their education. It is not necessarily indicative of them being from a wealthier family. Oftentimes, a family will take all of their life savings and send one child to a good educational experience overseas to get them academically and professionally ahead. And so this gentleman, I assume, was from India. He was Sikh. And now let's talk about what happened to this gentleman. It's being treated and is alleged to be a hate crime, but I believe that the person who was already charged was not charged with a hate crime.
No.
So Prabhjot was on his way home after his shift, goes and walks into his home, and immediately upon entering his home was attacked by, they're assuming, 2 to 4 white males. And of course, we do the beautiful act of slitting his throat. Now, let me say something. If one of the people who slit his throat was named Muhammad, the conversation we would be having is ISIS is now in Canada attacking people. But because it's a white male who slit the throat
Not
of
a,
another human being,
more than one.
I don't know how many actually slit the throat. I would imagine only one, actually did the deed of slitting the throat.
Right. But more
But
than
2 to
one was
4
present.
white males,
Yeah.
white supremacists is my general assumption right now, came and slit this child's throat. And I'm like thoroughly disgusted for a few reasons. Number one, the coverage of this. Like, I understand we're in the middle of an election season, but the coverage of this is non-existent. Recently, a family of 6 had a fire in Amherst and they all died. That is getting nonstop coverage, and it's a tragedy, don't get me wrong, but why is there no coverage of this child who had their throat slit in their own home after returning from an incredibly difficult job while being a full-time student? So an honest living, and had his throat slit, and his, like, my brain can't wrap itself around the magnitude of journalistic negligence that this story is facing at this point. Like, literally journalistic negligence. This poor man and this poor man's family, like, I get it, we're in a pandemic, and quite frankly, at this point, who cares about the pandemic? And I know a lot of people are going to jump at my throat about this pandemic, but seriously, dear white people, the biggest threat to people of color has never been the pandemic. It's been angry white people.
It's angry white people, exactly.
Or, as per a group that I recently found on Facebook that I find entertaining, it's always the person with no lips, I think is what the title of the group is. But it's really, I don't mean it in a mean way, and take it as it is, but
No,
to me, the
it's
pandemic has
true.
never been more threatening than an angry white person, ever.
No, and I'm just going to interrupt you quickly, and
Go for it.
I
I'm done.
but this is so true, because when we went into lockdown in New Brunswick last year, at that point I was involved with a couple of groups with immigrants, and mostly immigrant women, and I asked them, like, what is your biggest fear, and they said, well, it's bad enough that we have to worry that we could die, because we know if we get to a hospital we'll probably be seen last. That's bad enough,
And
but
it
on
was
top of it,
statistically proven after that too.
it has been statistically proven, exactly, and not just in New Brunswick, but in other provinces. So they said, not only do we have to worry that if we get sick, we could actually die, because we'll be probably seen later than other people, but we have to worry about our neighbors who are face outside our apartment building. So it's like, and we're
Sorry,
always
Natasha, can you
worried
repeat
that
that?
they're
It
going
just
to
cut out
think
for
we're
a
speaking
second.
to somebody else, and we're terrified.
Natasha, you're cutting out. Can you repeat what you just said?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Where did I cut out? The part where they
Go
said,
from the beginning.
so yeah, so they said, like, this was a group of women, and they said, well, not only is our fear about, dying of COVID, but we're scared that, our neighbors are going to report us for speaking to somebody, just they said we're afraid to step outside our apartment, because if we
Dude, this
accidentally
kid
are
was killed in his
seen,
apartment. Like at this,
they were more afraid of being reported for appearing to speak to somebody than of COVID. So this is true, that you feel more at risk from other people than you do of the actual pandemic. If you're already taking precautions, you feel relatively, safer. But like, this is so true that for us, it was never the pandemic. We have lived day to day being scared of people.
dude, you're
So
saying that these people are afraid to get attacked outside of their apartment. This guy was attacked in his apartment. Like this guy was killed in his
yeah,
home. He had
exactly.
his throat slit. Prabhjot Singh,
And
say his
also,
name. Prabhjot Singh
how did they,
had his throat slit in his home.
but again, that begs the question, how did they get in his home? Because I don't think he gave him a
I
key.
I don't think they were in his
So
home.
that's
I
another
think they
problem.
followed him into
Oh
his
God.
house. Like he essentially got mob ambushed on his way into his house. And
Yep.
for all these people
Yep.
that are
Yep.
like, this is so shocking, this is not unheard of.
No,
Can I tell you the number of
not
times that I
shocking.
was assaulted in places that were deemed safe
Yep. Yep.
by multiple people? And in fact, with multiple witnesses, like this guy was assaulted in the privacy of his home.
Yep.
I've been attacked in public places
Yep.
on occasion in front of hundreds of responsible adults that could have said or done something, didn't do anything. And that was when I was a child.
Yep.
Like now I'm pretty much an adult with an attitude and a powerhouse, and I've been told that probably bullets can't stop me. But as a child, like
Yeah.
again, this
You have
doesn't
no defenses.
surprise me that this young child, this young man who is a child,
Yeah.
23, leaving the motherland, coming to Canada, you are as vulnerable as a child.
As a
You are
child,
literally as
absolutely.
vulnerable as a child when you are in this country. I don't care if it's your first, second, third, fourth year of university.
No,
You do
you
not
don't
know the
know.
way the system is. You do not
You
know
don't
the
know.
way the government works. You do not know anything.
No, you don't. You really don't. Like, literally, you do not know anything. I was here for 7 years, and I wasn't even like hustling for a job, but I had no idea how the system worked. So you do not know. You don't know unless you have the benefit of growing up, and in addition, having at least one white parent, honestly.
Any white sheltering of any sort.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really, it's really, excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm yawning. It is late, and this mama has been up with a sick baby most of the weekend. So I'm sorry, and I apologize to most of our listeners.
But yeah, no, it's I'm not shocked at all. I'm just shocked that they got in his home, but I think you're right. They probably followed him inside. I guess that's what happened.
Well, here's the
But
thing: is it's not even being treated as hate crime.
it's not, and I didn't think it would be.
It's at first it was being like investigated as a hate crime, but it's
Yeah.
not being charged as a hate crime. And quite frankly, it takes a certain level of disgust and disdain to go and slit someone's throat,
No,
like
nothing was taken. That's what
like
I read in the article.
wild poultry that you just want to eat for dinner. Like I don't I there's a certain level of savage animosity in that behavior. Um and it's the type of savage animosity that only racialized hatred can create, or systematic sexism, like
Mm,
like the incels would do things like that. Like
yeah,
there's no way this is not a hate crime. And it really, at this point, I don't understand why we keep beating around the bush and pretending that everything is okay in the East Coast. This was in Nova Scotia, and
yeah,
that is quite frankly terrifying, because
yeah,
Nova Scotia is more civilized than New
yeah,
Brunswick, which is where we are.
yeah, exactly.
That's, I think, the most scary thing about all of this.
No, I mean, again, I think we've discussed this in previous episodes, but they keep recording zero hate crimes in New Brunswick year after year. So um, that's just ludicrous. That's ridiculous. Um, and it just shows the level of resistance there is to acknowledging that if something bad happens to people who are not white, it's either their fault or it was an well, the first go to is it was an accident. Then, if they can't say it's an accident, it's somehow turned around and it's made into your fault. So I'm just waiting for someone to come up with somehow this guy asked for it. You know, the thing is, I think that he had friends who said that nothing was taken from his home. Nothing, like there was no like evidence of theft or anything like that. So obviously there's a motive, and you know, I don't think we'll ever hear what really happened. I
Well, I've
doubt it.
still yet to hear about it in the news reports, right? Like if you search for it, you might find, by the way, it's
Yeah.
smile cookie season. I'm sorry to distract our
Right.
viewers, but um I've yet to find it pop up in front of me
Yeah.
the way that the tragic death of the 6-person family of white individuals has affected the community. Um, I haven't heard it in a news report on the radio. I haven't seen it in a news article. I've yet to see it pop up on any of my news reports, my feeds, and I have multiple news apps that I use on my phones, and that will pop up and give me updates, including local updates.
Yeah.
And I'm still yet to hear anything about Prabhjot Singh's life and death.
I wouldn't have heard about it if somebody hadn't shared it. Like this was a person who shared it. That's where I saw it. Or I wouldn't have seen it in any news article. And that's just typically how it is. Again, if it was New Brunswick, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't even get into a news article.
It barely did, and it was Nova Scotia. And here's the
Yeah.
thing, for all you all lives matter folk,
Oh,
this is proof that all lives don't matter, because ain't shit being said about this man
yeah.
and his death, his murder, his slaughter. Ain't shit being said about him. That's disturbing.
Well, I think they know. It's just that's just I don't even believe that people who say all lives matter, most of them even think that they need to say that. It's just a way to shut people up.
It's a
They just
deflection.
cannot- they just cannot tolerate anyone saying, Black Lives Matter or anything like that. They cannot tolerate it. So it's just a way to shut you up. Um, Obviously they already know that all lives don't matter. Like, I don't think people can be that stupid. People who consciously benefit from an unequal system cannot be that stupid. I do think that people who are not happy about that might be more oblivious because they don't enjoy taking advantage of the inequality. So I think they might be more likely not to see the obvious, um, sort of things that have been set up to make your life more difficult at every step. But I do think that people who are enjoying the benefits, they know full well exactly what's going on.
I'd like an explanation as to why there's a lack of discussion about this human life. Like it's just not enough for me. I can't make excuses for them. It's just not enough for me. I remember when, terrorism was a thing in North America and we were kidnapping Canadians or Americans and beheading them. They'll make the news, right? We're talking about Al Qaeda, we're talking about ISIS, we're talking when it was for, white gain getting oil populated countries or
Yeah.
creating Islamophobia or Middle Eastern phobia or South Asian phobia in Canada and in the Western world. It was something we talked about constantly. But here we are. It's equally gruesome.
No, but this is next door.
It's equally gruesome.
That was, overseas in another country by, non-government militias. So that's a completely different scenario. This is happening down your street. You'd think people would be interested in what kind of person would do that and why.
I'd like to hear from our listeners. Like, if you're listening to this, like, give us some feedback here. Like, either comment on this episode here on YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify, like, email us or message our Facebook page. We want to know, like, because my brain, I can't wrap my brain around it. And I really don't think I'm a stupid individual. I really can't wrap my head around when nobody is speaking about, it's not a beheading, but it's essentially a butchering of a human being.
Yeah.
In the equivalent of an animalistic slaughter. Dear animal rights activists, like, what about human rights? Like, I'm really sorry here, but like there's a point where we've gone too far. And I think where we are not speaking about this individual's life and gruesome, horrific murder, I think this is a demonstration of how much humanity is failing. When we can't even, pause in a pandemic to realize, what, people of color really do not give a shit about this virus that's coming in from the inside and eating us. Because every day we have a million viruses on the outside trying to end us, either professionally, economically, financially, socially, or most literally our lives. They're just trying to end us. And so I can't wrap my head around this. So if any of our listeners are listening, if you are a person of color, if you are an ally, and dear white supremacists who are listening, because I see our statistics and there's no way it's just allies and people of color listening here. I'm sure there's white supremacists listening in there as well. I want to know, like, what is the reasoning that we're not even talking about this incident? We're not talking about it in the schools. We're not talking about it in the universities. We're not talking about it in the news. We're not even socially discussing it at all. Again, I understand pandemic and
it has nothing to do
election, with but again, family of six burns down in a trailer.
Yeah.
It's all over the news and it's not far. One's in Amherst, Nova Scotia. one's in Truro, Nova Scotia. And it's really traumatizing that this life that invested so much money into our country is literally being discarded socially in this way. It really blows my mind. Like, this man contributed to our taxation system and
Yeah.
benefited little to none from it. He wasn't entitled to medical services. He wasn't entitled to education. He wasn't entitled to EI. He wasn't entitled to any of these things, but he worked and contributed into our taxation system.
Yeah.
And we can't even recognize his. Oh, it
Murder.
grosses me out. It's disgusting. It's really disgusting to me. I don't know what to say to that. So if any of our listeners are listening and can shed light to this situation other than the bureaucratic bullshit that we all know is going on.
But I think, I mean, I think the reasoning is obvious. You have so many factors that play into suppressing these stories, right? You have so many factors that play into the unwillingness to even acknowledge these kind of stories. And this is an actual death that's taken place, and it's a death that cannot be classified as an accident. I think the first thing that you and I know through personal experience, and I'm sure a lot of other people out there, is that the moment an act of violence happens, it's automatically classified as an accident. What happened to you on the playground was classified as playing,
It
right?
was an accident. I fell while playing was
Yeah, yeah,
the classification of my attempted murder / assault
exactly. By dozens of people. So that was
in
playing.
front of hundreds of people.
And that was playing. And and I think I long time ago, I think we discussed this, um was we were in a car accident. Myself and my children were in a car accident. And everyone on the scene, I think the passerbys, the people from emergency services, they were almost desperate to somehow, you know, make it look like I was responsible for being rear-ended by a trailer truck, you know, um, while I was parked. Like, it was just on the side, which you're allowed to do. So it's just, it was like they were almost aggressive about it. It was that level of, this cannot be this person's fault. And it was
And
so
just to
sort of,
clarify something for the listeners,
yeah,
Natasha was not even on the road
yeah,
when she was rear-ended from behind at full force, full speed by a transport truck. I just want to
exactly.
clarify and highlight the fact that Natasha's vehicle was not even on the road.
Yeah,
So this transport truck had to leave the road
to leave the road
to crash into her SUV, where
and
she and her two
completely,
children got
totally,
extremely injured
yeah,
and were
completely.
luckily to walk away with their lives, quite frankly.
Exactly. And this, the paramedic, the officer, I did not see any fire people there. And it was and this other man who was there were practically yelling at me and saying, "Well, why didn't you, why did you get off the road in the first place?" I was like, "Well, because you're allowed to do that." And I had a medical issue, like my kid was vomiting. So, and I'm defending myself. This person has almost killed us. And this group of men is all yelling at me. And my kids are standing there in shock. Like, they were in shock. Like, what is happening? And I think for them, that was also just as traumatic as the accident itself, because I think it showed very clearly that we are not safe. We are not protected. If something happens to us, the system is not going to kick in and protect us. And again, we're not like a group of men. This is a mother and two little girls. So you cannot pull out that excuse here that we look threatening. okay, which is routinely pulled out, for other people. And it's just no matter what, they will find a way. And I say they because it's like it's a cohesive front, and you cannot get it was so difficult for me to find a lawyer to represent me. I was getting excuses left, right, and center. Oh, I don't think I don't think this is worth pursuing. Why don't you let it go? They're all going to say the same thing. I'm just doing anything to get me to drop it. And I'm thinking, what are you people doing? Like, literally. And nobody wants to, you know, let the real stuff come out. They don't want it ever to look like you could be the victim of a white person. They cannot accept that this narrative that they have going, that it's always the immigrant person's fault, it's always the minority person's fault, it's always the Muslim person's fault, it's always the Black person's fault. It has to be your fault. They don't care if you're a woman, a kid, a baby. You could be, I think they would even blame a toddler, honestly.
I think they blame a newborn coming out of their mother's
Exactly.
crotch at
So
this point.
seriously, like there's no limit, so I think that it's how the entire system conspires to deliberately suppress, actual stories of violence, whether it's physical, actual direct physical violence, or non-physical violence, but suppress on a societal, and systemic level. And it's impossible to get the media to report on it. I mean, I've tried that. I've tried that with various violent, you know, acts that occurred. I couldn't get them to touch it. So if I had that problem, and I don't have a problem speaking English,
Dude, it's not
I'm
just they
just
won't touch it because
imagining
it's violent. They won't touch anything that involves racism. Like, look at 3+ Corp.
they won't touch it.
Look at 3+ Corp.
Yeah.
They frauded my husband and I out of thousands of dollars, their employees. We come to find out that this is a common practice, that anybody with color goes in there for service. Whoever is working is
And
going
gets
to
screwed.
demand or ask
Yep.
them for money for any of the service that they do. Or if it's a woman, they will ask for sexual favors, because they also have sexual misconduct allegations against many of their previous members as well as their previous CEOs. But it still happens today. I recently had a lovely lady come up to me and say, you know what, as a Black woman, I went to 3+. I went to have my business plan looked at, and they asked me for $7,500. And but for the fact that I asked around to see what the $7,500 was for, I then found out that their services are subsidized by the government. There's no reason for them to ask me for this money. So then I went and did some research, and she came and found me through my videos about, the whole scandal of the employee that they hired without vetting. And so when she contacted them again and said, what is this money for? They wouldn't answer her question. So then she brought up the incident of what happened with us. And then immediately their CEO, who is a class act, liberal bootlicker, woman of color, that she's highly qualified. Don't get me wrong. She's an intelligent human being. She's highly qualified academically, experience-wise, professionally, whatever. She's also a bootlicker. And she's also their scapegoat. She was conveniently, a woman who applied, who was also a woman of color. When you have a rumor as a corporation that is publicly funded that you have sexual misconduct and you have racism, then what you're going to do is you're going to find a woman of color to become your new CEO. And of course, this woman CEO is a member of the Liberal Party and best friends with Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor. So again, you're stopping any opportunity of investigation, be it on a federal, municipal, or provincial level. So it's not just violent crimes that nobody's talking about. Like, even getting an investigation into 3+ on a criminal level has proven futile. Like, the efforts have been proven futile. Having the media discuss the actual involvement of 3+ we got mediocre coverage of 3+'s role in this fraud at best. Very little exposure of their history. So again, like, if we can't get this coverage on something so minuscule as financial fraud, and segregation of the services we give to white people versus people of color in a publicly funded organization, then why the hell would we give coverage to actual violence
No,
against
they're
people
even
of color. We're
less
disposable. We're
than that.
clearly disposable
Yeah.
tax-paying members.
Yeah.
They do not give a damn about what happens to us as taxpayers.
Not at all.
And it's been proven again and again, even by these politicians in this election. People of color, especially in the Maritimes, even more especially in New Brunswick, are disposable sources of income for the province and the country. They tax us. We're usually coming in with a decent education, with a decent work ethic,
And money.
and a lot of us will invest a lot of money. So when you put this combination of, you know, historically having a full education, and I don't even mean university, I mean high school literacy, because this is the bar that New Brunswick has set. The bar that New Brunswick has set, and I'm pretty sure Nova Scotia is not far behind, is basic high school literacy. This is already somebody who is highly educated
Even
compared to
if
the
you
rest of
are
New
a
Brunswick.
living care provider, you need a basic high school, literacy. So it's not like anybody's uneducated, and it's not like people who are coming in as primary immigrants are uneducated, or most of the ones coming in are on the business program, and you know how much you're investing on a business program. So
Well, not just that, the
it's
people in
hundreds of
charge
thousands
of
of dollars.
orienting them and in
Yeah.
guiding them in their investments is 3+.
Yeah.
Again, that is who the government is funding. That's where your taxpayer dollars are going, for investment attractions of foreign investors who are immigrating to Canada. And
Yep.
again, these aren't necessarily people making it rain with money that have money to throw around.
No, this is their
Some of
life.
them are people with life savings, selling everything they have, selling out their, like, not selling out, but leaving behind their family and their friends and the life that they know.
Yep.
And the demons they know for the demons they don't know. They are literally being hand spooned to people who are essentially responsible for human exploitation. And it's no different. Like, look at this man. Prabhjot Singh was working. He was a tax contributor. He didn't benefit at all from these taxes that he was paying. He was paying 3 times, double to 3 times the regular student investment to get his education here. He gets violently and brutally murdered. And he doesn't even get the decency of proper media coverage. Now, again, for anybody who wants to hate on us, I am not saying that this tragedy of a family of 6 individuals is not a tragedy. It's not a horrific thing. It is horrible. I am a mother. The idea that this family and their 4 children got burned or smoked alive really crawls in my skin and breaks my soul. But what has happened with Prabhjot Singh is a more horrific tragedy, even more than his murder, is how we as a community, as a society, as human beings are treating this child's murder, because he is somebody's child. And 23, I mean, I'm in my 30s now, and I realize that in my 20s, I was still a baby. And this child invested everything into this country. This family invested everything, including their child. They gave us their child and all the money probably that they have to send him here for school. And we've allowed him to be murdered. We've allowed his murder to be treated essentially 10 degrees less from what it actually is. And we have given absolutely no coverage, no respect, no love to this man as maritime citizens, as Atlantic Canadians. I'm not talking about the thousands of Sikh Canadians that are, protesting this man's death. I'm talking about the general Canadian population ain't doing or saying shit. And let
Actually,
me tell you,
yeah,
if his parents, I hope his parents are like me. I hope his parents hop on a plane, get their ass here, lose their shit.
yeah,
Dude, I'm telling you, like, this country would be on fire until I get answers as to what the hell happened to my child. And
yeah.
I would not stop. Again, I don't even believe bullets could stop me at that point. Like, as a mother, as a parent, as, you know, someone who knows, in my case, I know the horrific capacity of cover up
Yep,
that the system will go
yep.
to the
Very
heights of
far,
doing
very
to
far to
cover
do.
this.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that it's not even in the media, really, like, this is like third world country shit. Like,
But this is why I say that we need to have our own media. I think that the Black community hit on the right thing when they created their own channels, their own networks, their own. Because you honestly, there's a phrase that if you're not invited to the table, bring a chair. I think somebody, actually a Black woman who was explaining to me how she got invited to the women's groups in Fredericton. And I was thinking, why do you need to bring a chair to their tables? You need to make your own freaking table.
yep,
To hell with their tables.
yep.
And why do they get to make the tables? I don't care if you're the majority. If you're just saying that I get to make the tables because I'm the numeric majority, you are a bully. You're just a bully. You're not a fair representative person. You are simply a bully. That's all you are. So why do I need to ask for, invites to your tables? I should make my own table because my table can be just as, effective, as yours. And because it's about motivation and it's about capacity, and it has nothing to do with, your ethnicity. That has zero to do with it. So why are we waiting for, mainstream media to pick up these stories? I think it's time that we started creating our own medias and, stop asking for favors and stop asking for invites because
And stop asking for permission. Like,
permission.
all these individuals trying to censor us, like, we've been told that our show is offensive.
Well, not
um
the show, but like words that were used
no,
were.
I've been told our show is offensive. I've been told our show is offensive to white people. It's offensive
Oh, really? The
to
show too?
Acadian
Okay.
people. It's offensive to
Oh no. Oh
allies
no.
who
Okay.
are white. Like, I've been told, like, I've been told the content is offensive. I've been told the topic is offensive. I've been told
Oh no.
our angle is offensive. And quite frankly, I don't give a damn if you're offended, because again, we said this in our last episode.
Yeah.
If you are so tied up in being offended by the language
Yeah.
and the finger pointing that we do and the brutal honesty that we express,
Yeah.
and you're incapable to be offended by the oppression, aggression, abuse,
Atrocities.
volatility,
Actual
atrocity,
atrocities. Yes.
any of it, like, there
They're
is
good.
something wrong with you, not with
Yeah.
us.
No.
There is something wrong with you. um it's I don't like, I don't even understand. I didn't see many comments, at least this time around, of hate speech in the comments regarding this kid. At least nobody's being like, no, he must have killed himself, because this has happened, right? When there was a Syrian family that
Oh God, that was
barely, the parents barely escaped with their lives and lost all 7 children.
this
There was
was a
hate
fire.
speech,
Yeah, this was a fire
just
that was
just like the one with the 6 individuals that just passed.
in a Halifax home. And my God, like the fair, Facebook forums, Twitter, they were on fire with people blaming the parents for killing their children on purpose. I
and
was
giving
just,
themselves second-degree burns and life-threatening
yeah. Oh no, and
injuries. Yeah.
they did it apparently for the money. Like, how do you even think of something like that? Like,
What
how can
money?
you
First off, what money? Like, I'm sure
What
they didn't have
money?
any life
No, they
insurance
didn't.
policies on their kids
No, they
that would
didn't.
give them much money. First off, there
Where
is
would
no
they get
life
money?
insurance policy on children that gives you a lot of money.
No,
First,
no,
first
they
and
would say,
foremost, like to
no,
anybody who actually thinks there's life insurance policies on just plain Jane and Joe's children,
no, no, no. They
the
said
most they'll get is like what, 1,500 per
home,
child.
home insurance policies. That's what they were talking about, because some people confronted them and said, "What are you talking about? What money are they going to get out of, participating in the murder of their children? What is wrong with you?" And they said they're doing it to get money for the house.
Did they
So
even
this,
own their house? Wasn't it a
who
rental?
even knows? I don't even think they
Pretty sure
own.
it was a rental.
I think it was subsidized housing provided to people who were refugees,
Okay.
and
So
of
they
course
wouldn't have gotten a penny out of the insurance on top of that for the home. So we can, take that myth and throw it
no,
out the
but
window along with the person who started it.
no, but when
Um,
people wanted to justify their racism when the Syrian refugees were, Justin Trudeau, did his performative action, which I think is performative, where
of
he
course it
brought,
is.
yeah, he brought his, 50,000, I think, refugees, as he had said he would. Um, People would justify their anger and their hatred and say, first of all, they'd say, well, they're all terrorists, and then it would be, no, they're only inviting families with children, families with children. And it's a little hard for them to be doing that. So then they would say, okay, they're going to take all our money. So their justification was, the first year the refugees came, they would get, access to subsidized.
We've lost Natasha again. Sorry, listeners. But she was talking about
Or
the fact that they get subsidized
subsidized house,
housing
um,
and maybe a little
access
bit
to
of
food
money.
banks.
There we go. I think we kind of have Natasha back, but she's not really back yet. But
Yeah,
it's
but only one, not ever.
it's frustrating. It's frustrating because again, we're thinking like, oh, they're going to take our jobs. Well, for one, many of them didn't even speak English. For two, they're going to get all their services for free. Well, no, the only services that they are getting is going to be their medical service that they are getting with the help of their refugee status, which every Canadian refugee is entitled to. And subsidized housing, well, yeah, but a
Yeah,
lot of Canadians get that too. And it's not the best of housing, especially if you're a family of 8
nine,
and plus
nine.
in a
Yeah,
1 to 2 bedroom apartment. And then like, where's the accountability? Like, again, there was no accountability. There was like general investigations. Nothing was really released about it. Like, why wasn't this family told about heating baseboards? Like, it's I don't know, man. It's just, nobody is saying that the accident was the fact that we never taught them about heating in Canada and the dangers of baseboards. We're saying that the accident was they did not know. We're not saying that the accident was they were not taught. And again, like, you have this kid, and the tragedy isn't that he was, murdered in cold blood, but he was murdered by a cult of hateful people. And it's like that second half, that white lack of responsibility, again, that white fragility that we're just not addressing. The fact that, there is flaws within our culture, that there is weakness within our people, that we make mistakes. I mean, obviously creating white supremacists is a bit more than a mistake, but I don't know. It's disheartening.
yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's a mistake either. It's very consciously and cleverly done. Is you're setting up populations of people against each other, by people at the top. So nobody looks at what really needs to be changed, and what they should be getting. Like, they should be getting by, well, why are they getting very consciously done? It's not a mistake.
And with that, I think we're going to bring it into closing statements. I think that this has been a really heavy, difficult topic to discuss. The brutal murder of anyone, especially a young man, for no reason, is just, I don't know. It's been a hard episode for me to talk about and to record. And I hope it was also hard to listen to, but that you toughed through and listened to this, because this is it. This is a window into the reality that it is being a person of color in Atlantic Canada. In our case, specifically New Brunswick. I'm shocked that this happened in Nova Scotia, to be honest with you, before it happened in New Brunswick. I would have expected it to happen here first, but this is the reality that we talk about, and for all those people who want to say, like, Saly, your memory must be exaggerating, which I've had people tell me my memory is exaggerated. I've been victim shamed. The two organizations told me my memories must be flawed. But this doesn't even require my memory. Look at what happened to this man. Look at what this happened to this child, this person's child. Look at how we're not talking about it. And look how we are brushing it off and brushing it under the table. What are your closing points, Nat?
Well, first of all, I want to apologize because I think my internet has been glitching the whole time.
Yeah.
I don't know how much came across,
Yeah.
but I will just simply say that addressing, first of all, addressing other people of color and minorities, it's hard to say. It's hard to say, don't expect the system to kick in for you, because then you're accused of being, somebody who's negative. I've been told I'm negative like 2 million times, but honestly, it's better if you don't believe it and it happens and then you're happy, than if you do think it's going to happen and you're slapped in the face every time. So, I don't know what else to say, but, say that, be aware that, and don't blame yourself, because there are going to be very concerted efforts to get you to believe that it's your fault and you somehow invited the attack. And don't fall for that, because that's the typical approach that these communities take. And as for, any white allies who are, watching, I would say, I'm assuming you're allies because you don't do this kind of thing. And just keep your eyes really open and don't assume that if something is being portrayed to be a certain way, that's what it is. Because it is too easy for white dominant systems and structures to jump in and to change narratives and to twist things, so the actual victims of criminal acts, whether they're violent or they're financial or legal, are actually turned around and they're made to look like they've got the problem, whereas they've been victimized over and over again by this whole process. So just be aware that it happens every day. And the reason you don't hear about it is because all these systems, including the media, which is private, and lawyers, which are private, jump in and support each other. And the more white a community is, and New Brunswick is very, very white, the easier it is to do, because you have that instinctive reflex, people thinking, I have to defend my community's, honor, I guess, or good name or whatever. And they just keep it, shut. And, you just said that you were surprised it happened in Nova Scotia. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that had already happened here and it was written off as natural or an accident. And that's why we never heard about it. I would not be one bit surprised.
Thank you, Natasha.
I hope that came across without glitches.
No, it came across without glitches, and it came across very clearly. Actually, your message was well said. I want to add to that talking about something's failures and shortcomings, that's not a smear campaign. Just because you're calling out something's negative behavior and negative performance is not being negative. It's not a smear campaign. It's calling things out as they are. We need to stop sugarcoating things as a society. We need to stop sugarcoating things as human beings. We need to stop sugarcoating the murder, the horrific execution, slaughter of people. We need to stop downplaying them. This is not a smear campaign. This is calling things out as they are. And this is an extreme negligence, failure, and disgusting disappointment by the media, as far as I'm concerned, by the journalistic responsible communities. I'm thoroughly disgusted at how, I can't even say how little this is talked about, because I feel like it's not even spoken about at all. His name is Prabhjot Singh. And again, if I'm mispronouncing his name, I'm really sorry. But you know what? At least I'm saying it.
At least you're saying
At
it.
least I'm trying. I have heard nobody tell me how to pronounce his name. And that's just
The only people talking
it's
about it is the
disgusting.
Sikh community. That's it. If it wasn't for the Sikh community, nobody would have heard about it.
My heart is just shattered for this family. I mean, think of the number of Canadians that, slap a tour visa on their child and send them to exchange programs all over the world, or ministry work all over the world. If something were to happen to them, would you not want that community to at least say their name? Like, just think about that. So please say his name. Prabhjot Singh. He was a human being. He was a brother. He was a friend. He was a son. He could have been a father. He was an ally. He was a community member. He was a taxpayer. He was a future. And he was slaughtered. He was literally slaughtered. So think about that. When you are thinking about the events of the week, when you are listening to the news and you do not hear his name, when you do not hear updates on what has happened to these monsters that literally just disgustingly terminated him in his own home, you can also hold your news reporters accountable, your news sources accountable. And with that, I remind everybody, if you like the content of our channel, please subscribe. Please share this message, share his name. This is Natasha. My name is Sally. We usually have Alon with us. We fight like cats, not because we want to, but because we have to.
You have to.
And these recordings, they're not just hard to listen to, they are hard to record. So remember that. And remember to be kind to each other, to support one another. But most important of all, please stand up for each other. Have a good day.